On the night of the 4th and 5th of December, 1971, the Indian Navy prepared to initiate Operation Trident, a devastating strike on the Pakistan naval headquarters in Karachi. It was a pivotal moment that shifted the balance of power in the naval conflict between the two nations. A group of Indian Navy missile boats, INS Napat, INS Nirgat, and INS Veer, surprised the Pakistani port of Karachi with a sudden and devastating attack. The boats, stationed at Oka in Gujarat, had been waiting for the perfect moment to strike, and Pakistan had no aircraft capable of conducting nighttime bombardment, so the Indian Navy chose to do so, under the cover of darkness. The fleet advanced to a position 70 miles south of Karachi. Once in position, they launched a surprise attack on Pakistani naval vessels. The first target was the minesweeper PNS Muhafiz, which was quickly destroyed, along with its 33 Pakistani crew members. The vessel disintegrated before it could even send a signal to the Pakistan naval headquarters in Karachi. After that, the Indian Navy fired missiles and sank the Pakistani vessel PNS Khybar. The Indian Navy's Operation Trident was not just limited to the destruction of Pakistani vessels in Karachi. The Navy also targeted a cargo vessel carrying ammunition and fuel storage tanks in the harbor. They also caused significant damage to the Karachi harbor fuel fields. Remarkably, the Indian Navy did not suffer any losses during the operation, and no casualties were reported. As a result, Operation Trident is regarded as one of the most successful operations in the history of the Indian Navy, showcasing the effectiveness and tactical prowess of the country's naval forces. Pakistan Air Force responded to these attacks by bombing Oka Port, which resulted in the destruction of Indian fueling facilities, ammunition dumps, and the missile boat's jetty, in the hope that this would prevent the Indian Navy from conducting any further naval operations against Pakistan. However, this retaliation did not deter the Indian Navy, and 3 days later, they launched Operation Python. Operation Python involved a small strike group led by INS Vinash, armed with anti-ship missiles. During their voyage, they encountered a Pakistani patrol vessel, which they successfully sunk. The operations by the Indian Navy put all of the Pakistan armed forces on high alert, leading to several false alarms about the presence of Indian Navy vessels off Karachi. Pakistan's Fokker Friendship Reconnaissance aircraft, carrying naval observers, which reported a Pakistan Navy frigate as a missile boat of the Indian Navy. As a result, fighter jets were scrambled to attack the frigate, which turned out to be Pakistan Navy's own frigate Zulfikar. The ship sustained significant damage, killing several officers and men, and injuring many more. Operation Trident was the first time that the Indian Navy used an anti-ship missile in an operation, which brought the Pakistani Navy to its knees. So, what anti-ship missile did the Indian Navy use? The Indian Navy utilized an anti-ship cruise missile known as P-15 Termit. Its NATO reporting name was STYX. What's interesting is that the missile is believed to have been developed from a compact fighter aircraft project called the Yak 1000 that started in 1951. This fighter aircraft had a cropped delta wing, a unique all-flying tail, and a slender fuselage. The Missile Design Bureau in the Soviet Union saw the potential in this design and adapted it to develop a radar-guided missile. They modified the air inlet system, added a liquid propulsion system, stabilizers, and integrated a radar homing guidance system to develop the P-15 Termit. The missile went into operational service in the late 1950s and saw its first combat in 1967 when the Egyptians used it to sink the Israeli naval ship Elliot. This was the first time that anti-ship cruise missiles were used in combat, and the results were pretty devastating. The missile measures 5.8 meters in length, has a diameter of 0.76 meters, and a wingspan of 2.4 meters. The missile weighs 2,300 kilograms and can reach a speed of Mach 0.9. The warhead weighs 454 kilograms, and it has a range of 40 to 80 kilometers. It's pretty impressive when you think about it, especially considering that it was developed back in the 1960s. The P-15 missile was the weapon of choice in all naval campaigns of the 1960s and 1970s due to the lack of alternatives. In the late 1960s, India acquired the P-15 Termit anti-ship cruise missile from the Soviet Union. The Indian Navy's OSA-class missile boats such as INS Nurgat, INS Nipat, and INS Vinash were outfitted with these missiles. The OSA class is the most prolific class of missile vessels ever constructed. These vessels were inexpensive and efficient. During Operation Trident, the Indian Navy launched 7 P-15 missiles, of which 6 were successful. And during the second attack on Karachi Harbor, known as Operation Python, all 4 missiles launched by the INS Vinash struck their respective targets. The missiles were highly successful when the Indian Navy used them on the Pakistani Navy. However, during the Battle of Latakia, the unstoppable winning trend of the P-15 Termit came to an abrupt end when the missile failed to locate its targets. 8 P-15 missiles were fired by the Syrian missile boats against the Israeli Syar-class missile boats, but none of them were successful. In fact, during the course of the Yom Kippur War in 1973, there were 4 major naval engagements. None of the 47 P-15 missiles fired found their target. On the other hand, the Israeli Navy was equipped with Gabriel missiles, 19 of which struck their targets out of 50. With the help of chaff and electronic countermeasures, Israel was able to consistently defeat P-15 missiles. The once feared P-15 had lost most of its luster by the middle of the 1980s and was increasingly used only for target practice. Armed forces modified their stockpiles of P-15 missiles to serve as high-speed aerial targets for practicing gun and missile defense systems. The Indian Navy also replaced these missiles with more advanced systems such as KH-35 and Exocet missiles. Currently, India has its own anti-ship cruise missiles, like Nirbhaya cruise missile, and the world's fastest anti-ship cruise missile, the BrahMos.